Hello and welcome. Today's topic is generative AI agents for compliant scientific scale. And we'll look at how to use MI, MSL, KOL, publications, and Congress agents with the right guardrails. Medical affairs sits in a uniquely sensitive place inside life sciences. It is expected to move fast and support the field with high quality scientific information, but it also has to protect credibility, patient safety, and strict compliance boundaries. The work is high volume and high scrutiny at the same time. Medical information teams handle constant questions from healthcare professionals. Medical science liaisons need fast, accurate preparation for complex discussions. Evidence leaders must keep up with the flood of publications and Congress data. And scientific communications teams are coordinating publication plans that span months or years. This is why generative AI agents are so compelling in medical affairs, and also why they must be designed differently than commercial agents. In medical affairs, the goal is not persuasive messaging. The goal is accurate, balanced, reference scientific exchange at scale with traceability. When done right, agents reduce time spent searching and formatting and increase time spent on scientific judgment and relationship building. When done wrong, they can introduce subtle errors, blur promotional boundaries, or leak sensitive information. In this video, we are going to walk through how generative AI agents can support compliant scientific scale across 5 core medical affairs capabilities: medical information responses, MSL enablement, KOL mapping, publications, and Congress intelligence. We will also cover the guardrails that make these agents trustworthy, including evidence control, versioning, audit trails, and escalation rules. Let's start by defining what an agent is in this context. A chatbot answers questions. A medical affairs agent completes a controlled task. It can intake a request, retrieve relevant approved sources, draft a response in a required format, attach citations, run policy checks, and route it for human review based on risk. It does not invent evidence. It does not make treatment recommendations. It does not decide what is on label or off label. It operates inside an environment where the sources and rules are predefined and where every output has traceable provenance. Now, let's start with the highest volume workflow for many organizations: medical information responses, often called MI. The MI team is constantly generating responses to healthcare professional questions, and those questions range from straightforward label clarifications to nuanced, highly specific situations. The challenge is that even when the science is stable, the workflow is repetitive. You have to interpret the question, find the right references, draft a balanced response, ensure the language meets internal policy, and produce the response in the correct template. This is exactly the type of work where a generative AI agent can create leverage while still keeping humans in control. An MI response agent begins with intake. It classifies the request type, identifies whether the question appears to be on label or off label, and determines what level of review is required. It then retrieves from an approved knowledge base. That knowledge base typically includes the current label, core data sheets, standard response documents, published literature that has been approved for use in MI, and internal medical position statements where applicable. The agent drafts a response that is structured and balanced, with a short direct answer, supporting evidence, and appropriate safety language. Most importantly, it produces a reference map showing exactly which sentences in the response are supported by which sources. This is where the biggest guardrail lives. The agent is not allowed to respond without citations. If the agent cannot find evidence in approved sources, it should not improvise. Instead, it should escalate, either requesting an SME to curate a source or routing the request to a higher review tier. In practice, this means the agent must be comfortable saying, based on currently available approved sources, I cannot support that statement, and here are the sources I checked. That behavior is what makes the agent safe. An MI response agent can also improve consistency. Many organizations struggle with response variability, where 2 reviewers produce slightly different phrasing that could be interpreted differently. By drafting from standardized modules and templates, the agent reduces variability and shortens training time for new MI specialists. The next domain is MSL enablement. MSLs live in a world of constant context switching. In one day, they might discuss a new study with a KOL, address a complex safety question, and then prepare internal insights from the field. The biggest productivity drag is preparation and follow-up. Searching across slide decks, publications, internal FAQs, medical plans, and Congress summaries to build a coherent briefing. This is a perfect place for an MSL enablement agent, but only if it is built to respect medical governance and confidentiality. A practical MSL enablement agent produces a pre-call briefing in minutes. It pulls the account profile, previous interactions, stated interests, local access context where relevant, and the most recent approved scientific materials for the product and disease area. It proposes a meeting objective, a small set of key talking points aligned to approved content, and a list of anticipated questions. It also recommends when to engage MI or safety teams if certain topics arise. After the meeting, an MSL follow-up agent can help transform raw notes into structured insights. It can separate scientific insights, access insights, competitor insights, and unanswered questions, then propose follow-up actions. It can draft internal reports and route them appropriately. Again, the guardrails matter. The agent must not embellish what the KOL said. It must preserve fidelity to the notes. Ideally, it highlights uncertainty or missing detail rather than filling gaps. Now let's talk about KOL mapping, a foundational activity that often becomes a blend of art and manual effort. Organizations want to identify and understand the experts who shape clinical practice, guidelines, research directions, and peer influence. But KOL information is scattered across publications, trial registries, Congress presentations, society roles, guideline authorship, and affiliation networks. A KOL mapping agent can bring structure and speed to this work while still leaving relationship strategy to humans. A KOL mapping agent can continuously update profiles by ingesting approved public sources like publication databases, Congress programs, guideline documents, and clinical trial participation records. It can build a network graph of co-authorship, shared institutions, and therapeutic focus areas. It can also categorize KOLs by expertise themes, such as heart failure with preserved ejection fraction, ILD subtypes, or rare tumor genomics. The output is not just a list. It is an explainable profile with evidence. Why is this person influential? What do they publish on? What trials do they lead? What committees are they on? The key guardrails here are privacy and fairness. If your organization uses any interaction data, access should be role-based and purpose-limited. The agent should not create sensitive inferences, like predicting personal beliefs or prescribing behavior. It should focus on verifiable professional activities and scientific output. And it should surface confidence levels and source dates so teams know when profiles are stale. Next is publications, which is a long-range, process-heavy domain. Publication planning includes strategy, gap analysis, timeline orchestration, author coordination, compliance checks, and the production of many document types such as abstracts, posters, manuscripts, and plain language summaries. Generative AI agents can help across the lifecycle, but the safe use case is not to generate a manuscript from scratch and hope it is accurate. The safe use case is to accelerate synthesis, structure, and consistency while keeping scientific authorship and final wording under human control. A publication planning agent can start with an evidence map. It inventories existing studies, endpoints, sub-analyses, and available datasets, then proposes a publication plan that aligns to medical strategy and Congress calendars. It can identify gaps like missing subgroup analyses or missing real-world evidence in a specific population. It can draft outlines for manuscripts and posters, ensuring that claims are consistent with the underlying data and that limitations are clearly stated. A writing support agent can then assist with drafting specific sections that are heavily structured, like methods descriptions, inclusion criteria summaries, and statistical approach narratives, as long as they are grounded in the protocol and SAP. It can also produce consistency checks, making sure that numbers match across abstract, poster, and manuscript drafts. It can manage reference formatting and ensure that the right citations appear where required. A particularly valuable agent in this space is the compliance and disclosure agent. It checks that disclosures, acknowledgements, funding statements, and authorship criteria are properly tracked. It ensures that materials adhere to internal publication policies and external guidelines.
It prepares submission-ready packages for target journals or congresses, including required forms.
Now we move to Congress intelligence, which is one of the fastest moving streams in medical affairs. A major Congress can generate thousands of abstracts, late breaker presentations, posters, and social media discussions. Teams want to know what matters, what changed, and what it means for their strategy. The traditional approach is armies of people reading and summarizing. That is slow and uneven. A Congress intelligence agent can provide real-time structure, but it must be designed to avoid misinterpretation and overconfidence. A Congress intelligence agent can ingest Congress programs, abstracts, and public presentation materials. It can categorize content by disease area, mechanism, endpoint, population, and competitor. It can generate daily briefings with the top clinically meaningful updates, key trials, and major safety signals. It can highlight deltas, what is new compared to prior data. It can also create role-specific summaries. One for MSLs, focusing on what KOLs will ask. One for medical leadership, focusing on strategic implications and evidence gaps. One for scientific communications, focusing on publication opportunities. The guardrail here is that abstracts are incomplete and sometimes preliminary. The agent must clearly label what is based on abstract level data and what is based on full publications. It must avoid definitive conclusions where data is limited. And it must always link back to the original materials so humans can verify. Now let's step back and talk about the operating model that makes these agents safe. In medical affairs, compliance is not a bolt-on. It is the system. There are 5 controls that matter most. First is the approved source boundary. Agents must retrieve only from sources that medical affairs has approved for that use case, like current label, Michigan Standard Response documents, approved literature libraries, and internal medical decks that have been through review. Second is citations and traceability. Every response should include references and ideally a claim to source map. Third is version control. When the label updates or a key publication is superseded, the system needs to know which responses and content modules might need refresh. Fourth is routing by risk. A routine on-label MI request can use a standard template and faster review. Off-label questions, complex safety issues, or questions that require data interpretation must route to higher-tier review. Fifth is audit logging. The agent should log what sources it used, what it generated, and who approved the final output. This leads to a practical architecture. Instead of one giant model doing everything, you create a suite of narrow agents, an MI intake and classification agent, an MI drafting agent, an MSL briefing agent, an MSL insight structuring agent, a KOL mapping agent, a publication planning and consistency agent, a Congress ingestion and summarization agent, and a policy guardrail agent that checks outputs against rules and required language. You also need measurement. The point is not to produce more text. The point is to improve speed, consistency, and scientific quality. The metrics that matter include MI response cycle time, percent approved on first review, number of escalations due to missing sources, MSL prep time saved, quality of field insights captured, publication production cycle time, and Congress briefing usefulness scores. And you should track quality signals like error rates caught in review and the types of issues that repeat. Now let's talk about what can go wrong, because a realistic plan requires acknowledging the failure modes. The first failure mode is ungrounded generation, where the agent produces plausible scientific statements without evidence. This is mitigated by strict retrieval, citation enforcement, and safe refusal behavior. The second is source contamination, where external or unreviewed sources slip into the workflow. This is mitigated by access controls and approved source registries. The third is boundary drift between medical and promotional. The agent must be configured to avoid promotional language and to route requests that appear commercial in nature. The fourth is confidentiality. MSL notes can contain sensitive information. Your system should handle redaction, limit retention, and enforce role-based access. The fifth is over-reliance. Agents should help humans review faster by highlighting uncertainty and assumptions, not hide uncertainty behind polished writing. To make this concrete, imagine an end-to-end day in a modern medical affairs organization. In the morning, an MI request arrives from an HCP. The MI agent classifies it as on-label, retrieves the relevant standard response and the label section, drafts a response with citations, and sends it to an MI specialist for review. The specialist edits one paragraph for tone, approves, and the system logs the final version. Later, an MSL is preparing for a meeting with a cardiology KOL. The MSL enablement agent generates a briefing with the KOL's recent publications, current interests, prior meeting history, and approved study data relevant to those interests. It suggests 3 compliant discussion paths and flags 1 likely off-label question based on prior meetings, recommending how to route it through MI if asked. After the meeting, the MSL uploads notes, and the insight agent structures them into themes and action items without embellishment. In the afternoon, the Congress intelligence agent pushes a daily summary of late breakers and competitor abstracts, clearly tagging which findings are preliminary. The team reviews the top items and prepares a consistent internal briefing. Meanwhile, the publication planning agent notices that a new subgroup analysis aligns with a strategic evidence gap and proposes an abstract concept and timeline, routing it to the publication's lead. This is what compliant scientific scale looks like. Not a replacement for medical judgment, but an acceleration layer that makes the work more consistent, more traceable, and easier to execute. So, where should you start? The fastest wins usually come from MI drafting with citation enforcement and MSL briefing generation using approved content libraries. Next, add Congress summarization with strict source linking and uncertainty labeling. Then expand into KOL mapping and publication workflow acceleration once governance and data foundations are mature. The larger point is this: medical affairs credibility is built on accuracy, balance, and trust. Generative AI agents can help you scale, but only if the system is designed to make trust stronger, not weaker. When agents are grounded in approved sources, produce traceable outputs, and route the right work to the right experts, medical affairs can move faster without sacrificing the scientific integrity that makes it valuable in the first place. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.